The 90s in Japan were an amazing time to be a car enthusiast. The economic boom meant that manufacturers were free to have a bit of fun and develop revolutionary technologies that had never been seen before. This led to twin turbocharged all-wheel drive monsters with things like electric four-wheel steering, heads-up displays and all sorts of innovations that are still in use today. Cars like the Skyline GTR, Impreza WRX and Lancer Evo became almost like mythical figures to car enthusiasts. While these cars came from the factory with legendary performance, they were merely platforms for the speed-mad racers of Japan to build upon, which is exactly what tuning companies did. These cars became icons of the tuning scene, names like Amuse, HKS and Blitz becoming household names across Japan, and with the advent of games like Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport, the world. One name has stuck out above them all, with the dedication to creating the perfect all-round package and wrapping it up in a lovely white striped bow: Mainz. Starting out as one of the first companies to offer remapping for ECUs for Japanese sports cars, they went on to create some of the most iconic and revered tuning packages ever made. Founded in 1985 by a man called Suzo Nakura, I think, in Ashina, Yokosuka City, Mainz started out as a humble but determined tuner, developing performance parts for JDM cars. Whilst they're known for their ECUs, Mainz actually developed suspension packages at the time as well, with some of their first products being air suspension. When they couldn't find what they needed for a car, they set about developing and manufacturing the parts themselves, which is how their cars came to be known for being a perfect, harmonious package. In these early days though, Mainz got stuck straight into the car that would get them their first bit of notoriety, the Skyline R31. Now, I know you're probably more familiar with the Mainz R32, but we'll get to that. Brand new at the time, the R31 Skyline would never bear the name GTR, Nissan almost deeming it not worthy, I guess, but instead called it the GTS-R. Mainz got their hands on it nearly as quickly as they came out of the factory and set to work improving on it in their signature style: simplicity. Sporting Nissan's RB20 DET-R, the precursor to the legendary RB26 that we know and love, Mainz simply gave it bigger injectors and one of the newly developed remapped ECUs, which took it from a staggering 200 brake horsepower to nearly 400 brake horsepower. Performance increases like this from something so simple had never been seen before, and with its feature in option, Japan was about to be taken by storm. Mainz would go on to tinker and offer parts for hundreds of Japanese domestic cars, but shortly after the R31, we would get the car that would start the lineage of the truly iconic Mainz cars, the R32 GTR. The R32 GTR was the beginning of the Mainz style that we know and love today. Contrasting the R31's dark looks, the R32 was a bright white knight, sporting the now mandatory striping on the sides and the signature on the bonnet. At the time, Japan was obsessed with power, that's all that mattered on the Wangan, but Mainz thought differently. Mainz sought to offer what they considered to be a more European approach to tuning, which was caring about drivability as much as power. Response meant more than big numbers. Mainz took the best of the best to make the R32 into as cohesive a package as possible. With two HKS turbos, AP and Brembo brakes, with everything else made in-house, the R32 was a force to be reckoned with. But even with the introduction of the R33, Mainz wasn't finished perfecting the R32 platform and invented the legendary R32.5. This was something I always wondered as a kid. I mean, why was it a 0.5? I mean, it didn't look any different, so what gives? Well, what gives was deeper than a facelift. When the R32 came out, it was fitted with Nissan's innovative ATESA system, or ATT-ESA. I assume it's pronounced ATESA. This was Nissan's four-wheel drive setup that could adjust torque split depending on how much grip was needed and where. Primitive by today's standards, when the R33 came out they advanced it even further with the ATESA ETS Pro. Mainz, nearly as quickly as the R33 hit the showroom floor, had worked out how to retrofit this system to the R32, massively enhancing the drivability with all that extra power they were putting down. All told, even with Mainz not necessarily chasing peak power, the R32.5 still put down over 600 horsepower, a 10-second quarter mile time, and all while being to keep it composed through the twisties, putting down a sub 1 minute time at Tsukuba without any crazy over-the-top aero. In fact, that came to be another distinguishing feature about a Mines car. Other than the livery, you wouldn't be able to tell this wasn't just any plain old R32 GTR, or as plain as an R32 GTR can be. For a lot of the Mines cars, simplicity was key. The Evo 5, the R33 and Impreza and more all bore mostly standard body kits, almost making them normal daily drivers that could become monsters when they hit a track. Even the most legendary car that we'll talk about shortly had little more than a set of canards on the front. Mines will go on to breathe on a plethora of JDM cars at the time, not just sticking to Skylines, covering everything from the legacy wagon to Nissan's Z cars, while offering parts and services for nearly every manufacturer across the country. But when Nissan would go on to launch the R34 Skyline, Mines would go on to develop one of the most iconic cars in tuner history, the Mines R34 GTR N1 base. Highly regarded as the daddy of JDM cars at the time, it would be no small task for Mines to improve upon the R34 generation Skyline. Introduced in 1999, the R34 GTR was powered by the venerable RB26 that we mentioned earlier, a 2.6 straight 6 with 2 turbos slapped on it, giving the alleged 276 brake horsepower as per the gentleman's agreement at the time, but we all know this was bollocks. The car featured advanced technology for the time, including the aforementioned Atessa, which had been upgraded, to now include the Super High-Cas 4-wheel steering system, making massive strides in on-track performance. And as a company that started out remapping and developing ECUs, this new wealth of technology was the perfect blank canvas for Mines to work their magic. Almost everything in the R34 is made in-house, bar the HKS turbo and the Brembo brakes. Starting with the N1 variant of the R34, which we'll get into in another video at some stage, Mines being Mines didn't go crazy with big power numbers, instead focusing on engine response, drivability and creating a full package. But they still managed to squeeze nearly 600 horsepower out of it, depending on the individual customer's request, so they definitely went for power as well. Coupled with upgraded shocks and brakes, but still with a mostly full interior, the key thing about this R34 was, like Mines cars before it, it was a car that could be driven in comfort to the track, set a blistering lap time and be driven home again, with no compromises. Not to mention that iconic blue steering wheel. I mean, I wouldn't want to be cleaning it, but God would I love one. And blistering lap times it did, by the way, managing a 57 second at Tsukuba and a 2:19 at Suzuka. The Drift King himself, Kiichi Toshiya, took it around the track for a hot version video and said it's almost too fast. But despite the stripes and logos, the R34 still manages to be understated looking. I mean, compared to other tuners at the time. All of the aerodynamic aids follow the same styling as the originals, just subtly enhanced. The front diffuser and rear wing, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were the standard models, just done in carbon, but no, they're actually bespoke Mines items. They didn't need to be flashy, they needed to be functional. Mines still operates to this day and are known for the exact same things they were before: simplicity and cohesion. Focusing mostly on cars like the R35 and the Z series, Mines still breathe on most of the domestic market to this day, but nothing's changed with what the company believes in. We focus only on the things that make a difference, which is why the iconic Mines cars have never truly aged. No over-the-top graphics, nothing to date them, they look as fresh today as they did 35 years ago. For many car manufacturers, less is more usually means things like weight reduction, but for Mines, less is more means doing only what matters and not getting bogged down in the things that don't. Maybe we could all learn a thing or two from Mines. I'm Tomo, this is 427 Motorsports, thank you so much for watching.